Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Resident Evil Gaiden. Barry, do you copy? Barry, do you copy? Over. Copy. Over. Thought we'd lost you. What's going on out there? I've found a survivor and I'm pretty certain I've located the B.O.W. It took everything I threw at it, but then it vanished. I'm lucky about the B.O.W. However, we have news on Leon. We have unscrambled Leon's last message. We believe he's somewhere in the first-class cabin area. Thanks for the update. Over and out. Why don't we take the lift down? It'd be a lot quicker. You can tell just based on the fact they called it a lift that the developers of this game are European. I believe M4, the developers, were British from memory. That company's by and large gone defunct. We only know, I think, about 2 main Resident Evil developers that worked on this game. Looks like the door to the first class is locked. If it helps, I have a key to second class. Okay, let's go to second class and give that a try instead. We may find something of use there. The second class cabin area is honestly one of the most crowded in the game when we get over there in a moment. But the 2 people we know from main Resident Evil that worked on this, we know Shinji Mikami was a advisor for the game in some form. And despite the story being non-canon, by and large, it was written by Hiroki Kato, who also wrote Code Veronica, and I think was involved in some of the other games loosely. Let me look that up to make sure I'm not just pulling that out of my ass. System planner for the original Resident Evil, director for Code Veronica, and wrote the Wesker's report for Code Veronica X. Okay, so he was slightly involved in some other stuff as well. Alright, so the second-class cabin area can be a little bit dangerous compared to most areas in the game because it's probably one of the tightest corridors in the game for the amount of enemies you have within it. And it's also the first area with a lot of optional rooms. You can go into basically every single suite here, and most of them will have a zombie, but some of them will also have some ammo, so it's the first place you can really explore and maybe find some extra items that are worth it, namely, I think some shotgun and handgun ammo. There's also a notable item we can grab along the way that's not just a key item, because you can find another weapon here, but even then, you don't technically need it. I would recommend grabbing every single weapon in the game just because, compared to other Resident Evils, this is definitely the game where your ammo is the most, not important, well, it is important, but costly to use, I suppose, because it's very easy to just completely run out of ammo in this game by fighting every enemy along the way compared to, say, Resident Evil 2 onwards. But because of the random enemies I brought up last part, it's very easy to just completely be forced to use a lot of your ammo without just running away and take dumb extra hits, using up your also very limited healing items. The random enemies that come from off-screen are just the worst part of this game, by and away. Either way, we got a lock-picking tool a moment ago. We're going to be using that, I believe, in another couple minutes to open another door. Because the door we need to get into in this area is locked, so we need to find a different key or two. Yeah, in terms of, like, notable developers of this game, we know about Tim Hull, who worked with this company, by and large, as a main developer, producing, programming, and all that. By and large, his most recent credit is Mission Impossible Operation Surma, which I think was the last game by M4 in 03. Hiroki Kato we've also talked about. He worked a little bit on other games like Vanquish. He worked on Okami a little bit. I think his most recent thing was Dragon Quest XI. Yeah, it was, as a quality assurance coordinator. James Cox also worked in this. He was another M4 developer. But he had some experience after M4 went away. He namely worked on the First Battalion Wars, as well as World Tour Soccer. He works still in games to this day at, by the looks, I think that'd be Konami? Yes, because he worked on PES 2016. So that soccer series that Konami puts out, that's debatably better than FIFA. I don't really care myself about sports games unless it's like absurd sports games like the Mario ones, or what was that one NFL game that was like post-apocalyptic, you got hired for the team out of prison and it's like super brutal. When games get like dumb like that. That's when I enjoy outright sports games. Mega Man Soccer is probably only the closest thing I like to a straight-up soccer game on its own. Also, I know I'm picking up a couple of key items along the way, like I picked up the lockpick a moment ago. We picked up that C4, more or less. Compared to a lot of other Resident Evils, the key items don't really have a lot of impact here, it feels like. But in this room, we do have ourselves an assault rifle, which is one of the best weapons in the game, but ammo for it is very sparse. So I recommend just keeping it around until towards the latter half of the game. The biggest difference when it comes to weapons outside of their actual damage rate and ammo count that they either have in the game or can be found is their movement speed on the battle screen. Usually, the more powerful the weapon, the faster it moves, to the point where the second most powerful weapon in the game moves absurdly fast, but the most powerful moves a lot slower than it for some reason. Either way, we got a first-class cabin key in that last room there, so we can now move back over that direction. Other notable people that we know have worked on this game, Kieran Wheeler and Shahid Ahmad. Kieran's most recent thing was on Aragorn's Quest back in 2010, so I think they probably left the industry at this point unless they're just more of a background person now. And Shahid is probably the most active out of all of them to this day because he still gets special thanks in things as recently as like Hellblade, Tenuous Sacrifice, The Persistence. By and large, the most active. Okay, no, there's the first-class cabin key. We got a key to this room a moment ago. That's right. Now we have the first-class cabin keys, so we can go look for Leon. Great. I'll play you there. The game's graphics are weird to me in that I find the actual environment and battle graphics pretty good, at least for what they were attempting to do. The cutscene faces, though, are definitely a little bit off. Still, I'll give them credit. This is the only game to really feature Barry after Resident Evil 1 in any substantial way until Revelations 2. Because Barry and Rebecca, by and large, have just kind of been forgotten outside of Resident Evil 0 and Revelations 2. And, like, their only appearance after Resident Evil 0 and 1, and the brief appearance in 3 at the ending. It's like the only time in the game that particular alert shows up, by the way. Oh, wait, it's that monster. He's around here somewhere. Huh? Where? I can't pinpoint his location, but he's definitely nearby. Suddenly, this thing's here again. That is the only time from memory that the game actively uses that alert on the bottom right of the screen, by the way, which makes me think they plan to use that as like the B.O.W. is roaming the ship and you could run into him at certain points, but they don't ever do that. Hey, Lucia, what's going on? How did you know that thing would be here? I told you, I can feel its presence. Right. I'd like to believe you. But I got this feeling there's something you're not telling me. I can still feel it. It's really close. Hello? No! That thing just grabbed Lucia. Then vanished. So, this was a very open room, Barry. How did you miss where it went? We have lost Lucia, though, so we are back down to just having Barry. I think instances like this are why they give you enough armors in the game to use multiple. Because I think if a character leaves your party and rejoins, in cases like this, they might lose their armor. I'm not entirely sure, honestly. They give you a lot of armors through the game. And giving multiple of the various tiers makes sense because you can upgrade to a higher tier of armor, but I'm not sure if there's a way for armor to permanently break. Because, frankly, death in this game is hard for me to come by. Outside of the obvious, dead zombies. As the game has a little bit of an earthbound scrolling health system. in that while your HP is depleting, you can go and use an herb and you will be saved from death like that. You can also swap to other party members in combat and you won't die because of that, I believe. In some cases. At least if you're not, like, actively about to die. They might lock you switching characters if you're on the way to death at that exact moment. Additionally, though, it's not very relevant right now because we're back to only having Barry again. Enemies will only ever attack your active party member. And whoever your active party member is at the start of battle depends on who you've selected on the menu. So you don't have to worry about, say, having Lucia at, like, 3 health comparatively, and them just attacking her while you're selecting Barry. They'll only ever attack Barry as long as he's selected. Which, in some regards, makes you wonder why they have a party system to begin with, outside of just having multiple weapons selected for multiple different damage types, or the inability to just swap, or not wanting to waste time selecting weapons, rather. Because it just makes the other party members feel superfluous, and like a waste of at least healing items in some cases. Not for nothing, I think Resident Evil 0 did the more playable characters at once thing better. This hole appears to go down a long way. I think I can make out a figure. I think it's Leon. Barry descends the rope to reach Leon. If you didn't get the rope from the top deck, by the way, you would have to go and get that right now. Leon, come on! Wake up! Leon regains consciousness. Well, that was easy. Ugh, my head. Barry, what are you doing here? When you failed to report in, somebody pushed the panic button. So they called me in to pull your fat out of the fire. Right. Sorry for dragging you. Wait a minute, there was a girl. Yeah, I know. Lucia, right? She's been captured by that thing. You know, there's something about that girl that bothers me. Like what? Well, she's got this weird power. Maybe she's the B.O.W that we're looking for. Yeah, sure. And that thing that took her doesn't fit the bill? Well, yeah, but... Listen, right now I'm convinced that Amoeba thing's a pretty good candidate for what we're looking for. And until I'm convinced otherwise, I like to see what I can do to save what may be the only survivor in this hellhole. You're right. There's a security room back the way I came. We might be able to use the observation monitor to find her. And now we got Leon in our party. He can use, by and large, I think the exact same weapon set as Barry. He's not limited by heavier weapons like Lucia can be. But right now we have one of the bigger structural problems I have with Resident Evil Gaiden. You are very often required to go back to that security room on the top deck. And inherently that wouldn't be a bad idea, because usually Resident Evil in certain parts of the game has a central hub you go back to a couple times. Like, Resident Evil 2 Remake has the main hall that you go back to several times throughout the early portions. It's basically your first main goal. Resident Evil 3 has that, train car you go back to as your main goal for the first half of that game or so. Resident Evil 5 has a chapter, at least, where you have a central hub where you go around to several different little tribal villages to grab some items. But in this game, you are constantly going back to the security room. I think you go back about 4 or 5 times total. And in a game that's only as short as this game is, it becomes really noticeable. You get really used to going back to that exact set of rooms over and over and over again. And in some games, that's not so bad. But Resident Evil Gaiden respawns its zombies at a higher health level every couple of save points. So you're constantly forced to just waste ammo and time refighting zombies that are just stronger variants of the ones you already fought. And it becomes really apparent. Sometimes when you do that, though, items do respawn at least, so you can say grab extra armor or ammo, but it's only sometimes. And again, some items in this game will only spawn at a certain point in the plot. And it makes getting those really annoying because you're like, oh, well, I forgot I went that way earlier to grab the item, but it wasn't there yet, but the zombies were there, and now they've respawned, so I'm just wasting double ammo. Also, that last zombie there was a random spawn that's not usually there. Honestly, the random spawns are easily the worst part of the game to me because it just makes ammo preservation so unpredictable. I want to say sometimes they spawn more actively when you're grabbed by another zombie, because usually whenever you're grabbed by a zombie, another zombie from the area will start walking towards you to try and make it so you have to fight like 2 zombies. But even then, that's inconsistent as all hell. Also, something else about the female zombies. I brought up last part or so that they can't, well, there's only been last part so far, that they can poison you. To slightly counterbalance that, though, they do have natively lower health. To catch up on procedures, crewmen should read during their spare time. Many technical books can be found in the library on the 2nd floor. Not gonna lie, though, we just saw one of my favorite little graphical things this game does, right there. Throughout at least the top floors of the ship, there's these little nooks that are shaded that zombies can hide in, and they actively do, like, get covered in darkness when they're in that. The attempt at atmosphere here for a Game Boy Color game is impressive. It just that it doesn't work pretty well, very well at the end of the day. I honestly would have preferred if we had ultimately gotten that canceled port of the original Resident Evil to the Game Boy, because that would have been weird for how it worked. Yeah, it's like movement in 3D movement, and that would have been weird on a 2D screen. The sprites probably wouldn't have been great for conveying the story. And ultimately, the soundtrack and ambiance wouldn't have been as good because the lighting would have been all over the place, as with detail. But Resident Evil 1 is just a better constructed game at its base than this is. In fact, I think even that, I think one of the versions of Resident Evil Game Boy we have was about 90% complete, and I think people have attempted to finish it up since then. Because some of the, like, canceled Resident Evils that have leaked over the years have been mostly complete to the point where people can finish them by and large. I'm not sure if that's happened with Game Boy Color. I know that's happened with Resident Evil 1.5, the, canceled version of Resident Evil 2 starring Elza that was canceled about 90% into development or something like that. That's been finished by fans, I think, at this point. I also know there's a fan version of one of the light gun games on the PlayStation for Resi that has been turned into like a proper Resident Evil, like the usual third-person camera and everything. Welcome to the library. This area is one of the most annoying cases of what I've brought up a couple times now, where items just don't spawn until later. During meal breaks, crewmen should use the kitchen on the 3rd floor. This kitchen can be found next to the Ocean View Lounge. There is an item right about where I am right now that just isn't there yet, because you can only get that later on in the game. From memory, I can't remember if that's an item you need to beat the game. I'm not sure if it's like a optional key or if it's one just for a room that has more ammo. But why? Why do that? It'd be one thing if, say, it was locked behind something. You could see, like, a weapon behind a shelf that you need a key for, and that key is only in a room that you can only access in a later chapter, so to speak. Counting the parts between saves as chapters. But it's just not there, and that's beyond weird. One thing I do appreciate about the game from just a visual standpoint, though, they do a decent job in some regards of structuring at least the base level design, and the main rooms even like it's a main Resident Evil, namely like the Spencer Estate, because you got the staircase leading up to a higher floor. You got an east and west wing of sorts for the first 2/3 of the game or so. It's just that navigating it just doesn't feel good. It is a little weird, though, that spin-offs for Resident Evil really did like using boats. Because this uses a boat as its setting, Revelations uses a boat as its setting. I think it was Dead Aim, one of the light gun games, was a boat as well. It's like they just like shipping their, at times, somewhat nothing stories to boats, because it's just easier to make boats scary because you're so isolated, inherently. Also, you saw a little bit of it there. This game is pretty prone to slowdown, but I'll be fair to the game, I'm not sure if that's the game or the emulator. Because, to be frank, I've never seen a copy of this game in the wild. If I did, I'd pick it up ASAP, but I've never actively seen one, and I'm not sure, actually, what price does it go on for, like, Amazon and eBay? Resi, Gaiden, eBay. Alright, is this one that's absurdly expensive or one that's absurdly cheap? $180, $250? I'm fine if it gets that expensive. No thank you. Not worth that kind of money. It's kind of a fun, maybe, conversation piece to be like, alright, here's my Resident Evil collection. What's this Game Boy Color one? They made one? We don't talk about that one. When it comes to this point in the game onwards, though, I do recommend using the elevators on the east side of the ship to just more easily traverse the floors, as while there's some parts that are harder to access using that route, it allows you to skip some zombies, especially some of the respawners, so you don't need to worry as much about combat in those cases. Also, I'm not sure if zombies that are on the ground but not dead, if they can attack you or not. I think they get back up after a while if you, like, off-screen them. But I'm not sure if they can actively damage you, because honestly, they never have. There they are. Looks like it's heading for the upper deck. This doesn't make any sense. As far as we know, that thing has wiped out everybody on board. Why doesn't it kill the girl? You don't quit, do you? I know you think she's the monster we're looking for, but if she is, why isn't she wiping the floor with that thing? I see your point, but... Look, if it's her power that's bothering you, don't worry. I know about it. Before you came on board, I had some time to talk to her. About 2 years ago, she was adopted from an orphanage. She said her ears started ringing about that time. Her ears? Yeah, apparently she has an acute sense of hearing. Not to mention her other senses. She also told me that she healed quicker than most. In fact, those same powers got her into trouble with local kids. They picked on her for being different. She said that things got so bad, her foster parents decided to send her to some relatives in Europe. That's why she's on this ship. Not because she's some sort of refugee from the Umbrella Labs. That sounds pretty lame to me. Jeez, why do I bother? Can you at least assume she's innocent until proven guilty? Right now, my concern is that monster heading for the upper deck. If taking that thing out means saving the girl in the process, then what's the problem with that? Come on, we've wasted enough time. Let's move. But with that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 3, we're gonna go try and save Lucia, I guess. See you guys then.